My name is Shelby Joe, the CEO and co-founder of Piqosity.com. At Piqosity, we help students and their educators create, score, and analyze practice tests for standardized exams like the Upper Level ISEE. The Upper Level ISEE is a 5-part, 2-hour and 40-minute test with 2 breaks, lasting between 5 and 10 minutes each. Students will be tested on their knowledge of vocabulary, reading, writing, and math. High-achieving students at competitive schools should have already learned most of the tested concepts by the end of their first semester in 8th grade. However, there will be some questions that ask about concepts that students have not learned, as the Upper Level ISEE is taken by students applying to grades as high as 12. The ISEE is both an achievement and a reasoning test. Achievement test strives simply to determine if a student has learned something that they were taught, whereas a reasoning test goes a step further to determine if a student can leverage what they were taught to reason their way through related but new and novel concepts. To this extent, there are 4 scored sections in the ISEE, 2 that test reading and vocabulary skills, the verbal reasoning and reading comprehension sections, and 2 that test math skills, quantitative reasoning and mathematics achievement sections. Our experience over the last 10 years with students in Houston is that the quantitative reasoning section tends to give students the most trouble because of the high level of abstract reasoning required by many of the questions. Conversely, the most competitive section is reading comprehension, meaning that many students tend to do well in this section, such that even missing just a couple of questions results in a lower score. The first section of the ISEE is verbal reasoning, which presents 40 questions to be answered in 20 minutes. At 30 seconds per question, it is the fastest paced part of the test, and it is all about the strength of a student's vocabulary and their ability to apply it. Students will encounter 2 types of questions: synonyms and fill-in-the-blank sentence completions. For the synonym questions, students will be presented with a single word in all caps followed by 4 additional words. They must choose the word that is most similar in meaning. The difficulty of this section comes from having to know all the various definitions of a word, including some very difficult ones that many adults don't even know. The second set of questions are sentence completions, where students are presented with a sentence that has either 1 or 2 blanks. Relative to synonyms, the context clues given by the sentences tend to make these questions a little bit more manageable for students. Quantitative reasoning is the second section of the ISEE, and it's generally considered the most difficult. In this section, students have 35 minutes to complete 37 questions, or just under 1 minute per question. Calculators are not allowed on the ISEE. Again, calculators are strictly prohibited. There are 2 question types, word problems and quantitative comparisons. Word problems present math questions in paragraph format where students must correctly translate words into mathematical functions. Quantitative comparisons are what most students probably say is the most difficult part of the ISEE. In this section, students are presented with values in 2 columns, column A and column B, followed by 4 options. A, the quantity in column A is greater, B, the quantity in column B is greater, C, the 2 quantities are equal, or D, the relationship cannot be determined from the information given. Many students will agonize over option D because it seems impossible for them to determine whether they simply don't know something or if the information isn't provided. For both word problems and quantitative comparisons, the tested material comes from algebra, geometry, and higher-level math concepts such as trigonometry and statistics. Our experience is that most 8th graders should have seen most of the tested concepts by the end of December of their 8th grade year. After a 5 to 10 minute break, the third section of the ISEE is reading comprehension. In this section, students are presented with 6 passages followed by 6 questions each, in which they have 35 minutes to complete. Assuming that students spend half of their time reading and half of their time answering, that's about 3 minutes per passage and half a minute per subsequent question. Each passage is roughly 400 to 500 words in length, or about the length of your average online blog post or a daily newspaper article. Passages come from both fiction and nonfiction works, but exclude poetry. Lines are numbered, but keywords are not bolded or underlined or otherwise called out for students. Therefore, active reading, the process by which students are underlining and circling, may be very important here. The questions for each topic include everything from the main idea to vocabulary and context to everybody's favorite inference, in which students must determine what the author might say or believe based off what the student has already read. The reading comprehension section is where most students tend to do the best, or at least feel like they did the best. However, given how highly so many students score in this section, and that the ISEE is graded on a normal curve, the reading comprehension section also leaves the least room for mistakes. The mathematics achievement section is the 4th and final scored portion of the Upper Level ISEE. Students are presented with 47 questions and given 40 minutes to complete them, or about 51 seconds per question. Most of this section is composed of word problems similar to the quantitative reasoning section. However, these word problems tend to be a little more straightforward. But in exchange for their simpler presentation, they may require more computations. Additionally, a handful of questions will be simple computations in which questions are presented with standard math notation accompanied by little to no wording. Like the quantitative reasoning section, tested math concepts include algebra, geometry, and trigonometry, which most 8th graders should have seen by the end of their first semester. After a second 5 to 10 minute break, the last section of the ISEE is the personal essay. Students are presented with one prompt and are given 30 minutes to organize their thoughts and write them out. The prompt is usually personal in nature, meaning that students will not be required, for example, to have outside knowledge of current events or facts and figures. However, the essay is not scored by the ERB. Instead, schools receive a copy of the student's maximum 2-page essay and are allowed to draw their own conclusions. Students should strive to logically and concisely address the given prompt. Schools will primarily want to see how students express their ideas in writing under pressure and without the benefit of third-party editing. Since it's a personal essay, the schools also want to see if the students can understand how topics relate to them and how they're learning from their experiences. Supposedly, this translates well to how they'll perform in the humanities courses and in science papers. For more information and tons of practice for the upper level ISEE, consider purchasing our premium practice tests at www.piqosity.com. With more than 6 full-length practice tests and 2,000 adaptive practice questions, Piqosity offers the equivalent of nearly 19 full-length upper-level ISEEs. Plus, we and our partners are constantly adding more. Students will get real-time feedback on their strengths and weaknesses and an estimate of their test day stanine score. This stanine score estimate updates after every problem set a student completes. Piqosity also offers a parent and educator dashboard so that students can be held accountable and kept on a specific practice schedule. Learn more and sign up at Piqosity.com. I'm Shelby Joe, the CEO and co-founder of Piqosity. I hope that you found this video helpful and that you're able to get into the school of your dreams. Good luck, and more correctly, happy studying.